Good day, dear colleagues. Greetings from Harbin, China. We represent Arctic Blue Economy Research Center of Harbin Engineering University. Professor Gao Tianming is the director and chief expert of the center. My name is Vasily. I'm an associate professor and research fellow. We appreciate the opportunity to take part in the 9th International Arctic Shipping Seminar, and we would like to thank the respected organizers for inviting us. We are happy to greet the hosts and all the participants of the seminar today. In our presentation, we will briefly overview the recent and current cargo transportation activities of China in the Northern Sea route, and we will discuss how China may collaborate with Russia and other countries to ensure the development of secure, navigable routes in the Arctic and to partner in the engineering and construction of various kinds of vessels and maritime equipment. China's vision of its role in the Arctic is not only about opening and securing new trade routes, but also about facilitating Asia-Europe connectivity and bridging the existing gap between traditional industries in the Arctic and China's market. Since the release of the vision for maritime cooperation under the Belt and Road Initiative in 2017, northern maritime routes have been incorporated into the Belt and Road network as a polar or ice Silk Road in various interpretations. And such a move demonstrates China's intention to collaborate with all concerned countries to establish a workable economic and transport corridor in the high north. Particularly, China expects its involvement in cargo transportation in polar waters, like import of Russian minerals and other resources, Asia-Europe and Asia-America transit shipping and cabotage. It also expects an involvement in maritime and ice engineering and navigation security to pave the way for Chinese commercial exploration, transport and logistics operations in the Arctic Ocean. China declares that it intends to build the Polar Silk Road based on the respect of the sovereign rights of the Arctic states over shipping routes and resources, but in accordance with international law, particularly with the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea. Founding its position on this convention, China proceeds from the vision of the Arctic as a mankind's common heritage, but such an approach is not shared by Russia, who actually operates the Northern Sea route. For Russia, the Northern Sea route is a historically established national transport route in the Arctic. Although Russia's regulations of shipping in the route are carried out according to general recognized principles and norms of international law and international treaties of Russia, there is an authorized secondary national legislation, among others, to regulate shipping, icebreakers support, and ice pilotage along the route. While China demonstrates broad inclusiveness and calls for a liberal multilateral approach to the use of shipping routes in the Arctic, Russia advocates the exclusive rights in the Northern Sea route based on historical, geographical, climatic, and security conditions. Freedom of navigation is just an example of how some of the most important provisions of China's and Russia's policies in the Arctic contradict each other. Nevertheless, the two countries have not stressed these contradictions, and so far they have succeeded to avoid collisions in practical politics. Even though Russia-US and China-US relations in the Arctic are characterized by increasing hostility, those between Russia and China, on the contrary, demonstrate increasing convergence. Foreign shipping companies, including Chinese ones, started using the Northern Sea route for transit in the early 2010s, and the number of vessels on the route has been increasing, but mainly due to domestic transportations made by Russian flag vessels. The number of Chinese vessels transiting through the Northern Sea route has been growing from 0 in 2014 to 22 this year, as of the middle of November. By developing international transit in the Northern Sea route, China expects that the use of the route could potentially reshape the geography of global transportation, and thus benefit the diversification of the network of China's maritime trade corridors. Since the early 2010s, when the Northern Sea route was promoted by Russian authorities for international transit sailings, the Chinese government has increasingly encouraged big companies to participate in the infrastructure construction in the Arctic to pave the way for regular commercial operations in the Arctic Ocean. Chinese enterprises have invested in offshore oil and natural gas fields in Russia, in mines and shipping infrastructure in Greenland, in resource extracting developments in Canada, and in many other projects in the Arctic. COSCO Shipping Group has entered many investment projects in Europe, like port terminals, for instance, and most of Chinese vessels in the Northern Sea route are actually owned by COSCO Shipping Specialized Carriers Company. Although the contribution of Chinese vessels in particular, and international transit in general, to the cargo turnover in the Northern Sea route has so far been extremely small, its increase is required to execute Russia's plan to achieve 80 million tons of cargo in the Northern Sea route by 2024. Achieving this goal requires significant modernization of the entire transport and logistics infrastructure of the Northern Sea route, as well as the improvement of shipping capabilities. According to the Foundations of State Policy in the Arctic until 2035, Russia is aimed at the development of the icebreaker, rescue and auxiliary fleets, improvement of a control system for ensuring the safety of navigation, construction and modernization of seaports along the Northern Sea route, expansion of navigation opportunities on the rivers in Siberia and the Far East, expansion of railway network to facilitate cargo transportation from inland territories to the Northern Sea route ports, and also development of a space monitoring system and information technologies for continuous and integrated support of navigation and other activities in the Arctic. The plan for the development of the Northern Sea route infrastructure until 2035 actualizes the improvement of navigation and hydrographic support for shipping in terms of ICE-3 pilot vessels, ICE-3 and ARC-7 hydrographic vessels, for instance. It also actualizes the insurance of navigation safety in terms of monitoring of ship traffic parameters and meteorological and ice conditions. And it prioritizes the development of transport infrastructure, for instance, Pevek and Sabeta seaports, Amderma and Pevek airports, Northern Latitudinal Railway, and Belcamur railways. In the field of maritime engineering, Russia's priorities include shipbuilding technologies, for instance, welding of nitrogenous and other types of steels and alloys, augmented reality, additive and cryogenic technologies, protection from icing, propulsive systems, and others. So these priorities also include radio and electronic equipment, for instance, geological, geophysical, hydrographic, and cartographic works, ship traffic control systems, navigation safety, and also one of the priorities for Russia in the field of maritime engineering is engineering of icebreakers and ice-class vessels, like nuclear icebreakers, multifunctional marine rescue vessels, and dredging fleet. China could contribute to bridging some of the gaps that Russia experiences today in the Arctic by the inclusion of Chinese companies in joint projects in the spheres of infrastructure and production. In many ways, the priorities declared by China, they actually match Russia's strategic needs in maritime equipment and solutions. There are 6 principal spheres where China's competences might be used. First, Chinese companies and research institutions could contribute to bridging the gaps that Russia is experiencing by upgrading equipment in the fields of deep sea exploration, ice zone prospecting, and atmosphere observation. Besides, China could become a source of technological innovations in the spheres of oil and gas drilling and exploration, in the sphere of renewable energy development, navigation, monitoring in ice zones, and engineering of icebreakers. In the spheres of engineering, prospective areas for collaboration between China and Russia include engineering projects of marine vessels and equipment, like robotic engineering, marine platforms, and subsea units, for example. They also include digital technologies like augmented reality, 3D modeling, robots, swarm intelligence technologies, and many more. The use of unmanned aerial vehicles for ice monitoring, for navigation, for geophysical and meteorological surveys is a developing sector in the Arctic today. China is one of the global leaders in unmanned aerial solutions, and China could contribute with the technologies of engineering and construction of heavy long-range unmanned aerial vehicles required for the monitoring of long-distance, high-latitude routes in the Northern Sea route. Also, there is a demand for mid-range unmanned vehicles with internal combustion engines and short-range onboard robot aircraft for quick operational surveys of the ice situation. Chinese companies may also participate in the development of unmanned navigation technologies, which have started in Russia recently, including computer vision, including automatic navigation, technical verification, data recording. Chinese companies may contribute to the replacement of the US and European radar equipment on the Russian market, for example, meteorological bios and small low altitude spacecrafts for monitoring of climate, for monitoring of ice conditions or navigation. And also Chinese companies may participate in the development and provision of intellectual geographical information services for data analysis and visualization of navigational charts. Notwithstanding the high-level declarations of ever deeper collaboration and the agreements concluded between Russia and China, the two countries are still rather far from launching effective cooperation in the spheres of shipping and engineering in the north. Chinese investment in Yamal LNG and some other projects in the Arctic zone of Russia are just few spots of partnerships. They do little to address major impediments to the vision of the Northern Sea route as a viable network for transportation and trade, such as lack of icebreakers and transport vessels of appropriate deadweight and ice class, scarcity of seaport facilities, scarcity of coastal infrastructure for sustainable all year round cargo shipping, underdeveloped systems of navigation aids, ice monitoring, and supported navigation, inaccuracy of nautical charts, and many more of those engineering related obstacles apart from still heavy climate conditions and fast changing ice situation. The establishment of economically viable, technologically feasible, and stable cargo shipping in the High North requires extensive investment in the construction and modernization of the infrastructure in the Northern Sea route. There are infrastructure gaps, including the lack of deep water seaports able to receive large capacity vessels, transport hubs with appropriate logistics and capacities for loading and reloading of various types of cargo, support and rescue points for safe and stable navigation, in the severe and fast changing weather, wave and ice conditions. And there's also lack of refueling points for Chinese transit vessels and for other foreign vessels. Russia's need for financial resources to move forward the modernization of the Northern Sea route infrastructure and modernization of the icebreaker fleet, along with China's capacity to supply these financial resources, establish a good match for the two countries to collaborate in the Arctic. In 2019, President Putin and President Xi signed the joint statement on developing comprehensive partnership and strategic interaction entering a new era. Concerning the Arctic, the document aims to foster China-Russia collaboration in expanding the exploration and use of shipping routes, infrastructure, and resources. Advancement development zones is one of the opportunities for Chinese engineering companies in the Russian Arctic. They may contribute to the development of polar science, engineering, infrastructure, and various services with their investment, technologies, and ever-growing expertise in the Arctic-related issues. The establishment of joint research centers also contributes to the development of polar technologies. Recent examples are the China-Russia Innovation Center for Maritime Engineering between Russia's Association Marinet and Research Institute of Harbin Engineering University in Yantai. There is also the China-Russia Arctic Research Center established between the Pilot National Laboratory for Marine Science and Technology in Tsingtao from Chinese side and the Shershov Institute of Oceanology in Moscow from the Russian side. And also there is the Russia-China Arctic Research Consortium initiated by Harbin Engineering University and Northern Arctic Federal University in Arkhangelsk. Apart from the advancement development zones, cost-sharing mechanisms in shipbuilding, engineering, and navigation safety would appear commercially advantageous for Chinese companies to be increasingly involved in more intense shipping in the north. In addition to these, one of the effective drivers of cooperation is the establishment of joint enterprises. In 2017, Novatek and Sovcomflot from Russia's side, and COSCO and the Silk Road Fund from China's side, they signed an agreement on the establishment of Marine Arctic Transport LLC. And this company is expected to render financial support and implement new logistics schemes for year-round transportation of hydrocarbons from Russia's Arctic to the countries of the Asia and Pacific, as well as it will develop cargo transit between Asia and Europe through the Northern Sea route. Future significance of international transit via the opening transport routes in the north depends on a number of prerequisites, including interests from Russia, which is a key actor and actually a holder of the Northern Sea route, including sustainable cargo base, year-round shipping, and needed navigational support and rescue infrastructure. The adoption of Chinese technologies and engineering solutions requires Russia's openness to accept them, and thereby tolerate China's rising presence in the Russian sector of the Arctic, as well as substantial changes to the Russian investment, tax, and labor legislation. Joint China-Russia investment projects should be fostered by tax preferences, like, for example, temporary reduction of mineral extraction tax for oil and LNG projects, and suspension of profit, property, and land taxes. There should also be permissions to attract Chinese labor above quotas, conclude concessional agreements without tendering, and receive federal subsidies for the construction of external infrastructure. Ultimately, the intensification of international transit in the Northern Sea route largely depends on Russia's willingness to modernize national legislation and create favorable conditions for collaboration with China and other partners in the spheres of maritime engineering, shipbuilding, ice and weather monitoring, and navigational services. These were the major points of China's involvement in the development of commercial navigation on the Northern Sea route. Thank you very much for your attention. Our presentation is over, and again we would like to thank the organizers of the seminar for the opportunity to present our research to the respected participants. We wish all of you a productive and fruitful seminar for the benefit of international collaboration in the Arctic. Thank you.